I love having this conversation. In fact, I do a boot camp. Well, I do 3 boot camps on automation. But people generally don't know where to start with automation. And I didn't know where to start either when I first started at that big MSP, because they had very little automation. In fact, when I first got there, because they were a ConnectWise partner, they had Automate, but they didn't have anybody really technical enough. Well, there was a lot of technical talent there, but they weren't like running the RMM, and they weren't the automation person. So nobody was really doing it. So what I did was, because I can script is one of those things, is I thought I'd start with for myself. So what I wanted to realize is, where do I start? Now, I started, going, well, ConnectWise has most of our business information, right? It has all of our agreements and invoices, it's basically our CRM. So it has all of our customer names and contacts and their employees and all of that information, right? So I wanted to start in there because it had all of our service boards. Now, I'm not slagging on ConnectWise here, so don't get me wrong, but reporting in ConnectWise can be a little challenging. Pretty much reporting in any product in the RMM space can be challenging. It takes a lot of work to develop reports because you have to kind of correlate information. So anyways, with SQL, I started getting the information I needed, right? That's how I started. I started understanding first the key metrics were what is reactive, what is proactive, right? What am I automating against today? Because I needed to be able to track. I needed to see ROI, right? So what I did was I wanted to see what customers were generating the most tickets. Okay. So long story short, we had a car consortium across the province of Ontario here where I live in Canada. And there was probably, I think, 60 or some dealerships that we were maintaining across the province. And they were generating, they were our biggest customer. Well, they weren't our biggest customer, actually. They were one of our biggest customers, but they were generating the most tickets. So I then start noticing that an unhealthy majority of the tickets were coming from their finance team. Start diving into that, reporting on that. And, I basically start seeing, like, from CFO to finance director to the entire finance staff, that they were generating, I wouldn't say half, but a good portion. So they were using QuickBooks Desktop, right? A server-based QuickBooks application. And I started talking to the CFO about, taking what they had and moving it up to the cloud. And they're like, we can't do that. We're very customized and we'll break everything. And yeah, it might be something to look in a year from now or what have you, but you need quick fixes now. So what I started doing is automating some routines around what kept happening, right? They kept on having to do backup restores. They kept on having the server go down or QuickBooks just not working. That was probably the number one, right? How do I keep QuickBooks healthy? And it's funny, it's like, hey, it's, at the time it was probably 2018 or maybe 2017, but it was one of those things where I quickly started noticing that I was getting the same issues, and what I wanted to do was improve it with automation. So simple stuff like service restarts, ensuring processes were running, a lot of server-side stuff, just health of the server, moving a lot of the data that was on the server off the server and putting it on a NAS, which is a really cheap solution to storing data locally. And it's something that we had to do. They weren't ready for the cloud. They weren't willing to even entertain that as an idea based on their unhealthy skepticism around cloud and what have you. So, but they were okay with purchasing a NAS for $2,000 and me basically taking a lot of the load off the server. So that is how I started. So again, look at your pains. Who is creating the most pain or the most noise in the organization? And that is where I started. Now you might be going, well, I wouldn't necessarily start at the biggest problem. Well, I did, because it'll give you the best return on investment. You're having somebody who's just starting, right? You know who your biggest customer is or customers are. And what you're going to do is improve their life, because honestly, they're first class. They're the ones paying you 10,000, 20, 30. We had customers paying us somewhere sometimes upwards of 40,000 a month. Now, it's very important to focus on them and retain those, because it can be disastrous when you lose one, especially if you only have one. I don't know if anybody on the call, let me click here. By the way, I'm sorry, I've been doing all the talking. You feel free to unmute your line and chime in at any time. My apologies for not doing that sooner, but you should be able to unmute at this point. But one thing I wanted to say was just around, developing automation is starting with your best customers first, right? That's how I did it. And then it just kind of evolved. And then I started focusing on our NOC team. And then I started focusing on having a dedicated resource like you are today, right? That's how I start. Running reports, understanding where your pains are, and then focusing on those pains. That's basically how I did it.